Grambling versus Alcorn is our game of the week. Running the ball and the turnover margin will be very important for both squads. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Make a Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $20 off your first purchase. We'll wrap up today's episode as we normally do with a key to victory for both teams. We have two storylines to watch in the middle of the show, and we kick it off with our three matchups. Now, I want to look at the first and most important matchup of this game, and that's Xzaveir Vaughn and Jacorian Sewell versus the Grambling linebackers. This is by far the most fascinating. This is by far the most interesting. This is by far the most impactful matchup that you will watch in this game. If you look for nothing else, look for how Vaughn and Sewell impact the game, because the Alcorn offense runs through them. So if you're able to eliminate Vaughn, if you're able to eliminate Sewell, even if you're not eliminating both of them, let's just say you take one of the two, limit their effectiveness. You do that, I think Grambling has a much better chance of winning this game. So the offense runs through these two. So let me break down why that is the case so you can understand just how important that this truly is, because Vaughn is the leading rusher in the SWAC, and he's a quarterback, right? I think I talked about this with, I think it was Alabama State last week, where I talked about how they were 2 of the 5 leading rushers in the conference. At that time, Vaughn was 1, and I think Sewell was 3, I think at the time, maybe even 2. But also I noticed that the SWAC website has Alcorn stats all out of whack. They have them playing 7 games, and that has not happened. They haven't played the 7th game yet. So you kind of got to look at Alcorn's numbers independently, because the SWAC website don't have it all the way together. That being said, I want to look at what Xzaveir Vaughn was able to do over the last couple of games, 4 to be exact. Let's look at Xzaveir Vaughn's last month of action. Against Edward Waters, he had 255 yards through the air, 96 on the ground. He had 204 yards through the air against McNeese, 127 on the ground, and a touchdown. I forgot to mention, against Edward Waters, he had 4 rushing touchdowns. He had 1 passing touchdown. Against McNeese, 1 rushing touchdown. Against Mississippi Valley State, he had 105 yards passing, only on 8 of 14, so it was a very small sample size for the record. These other ones were drastically different. He only had 14 passes. He completed more than 14 passes in the other game. But 105 yards, 1 touchdown. He had 57 yards rushing and 1 touchdown. Then last week against UAPB, this is when he really did it up. So he had 217 yards through the air, 1 touchdown. Then he had 157 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Now, the thing that goes to show you is that Xzaveir Vaughn is by far the biggest dual threat in HBCU football on the D1 level, in my opinion. I can't think of anybody who is rushing and passing like he is that effectively. I don't think, just going off the top of my head, I'm not seeing it, right? Because, on any given day, Xzaveir Vaughn is a threat to give you 200 yards through the air, 100 plus on the ground. He could give you both of those in the same game. To me, that is the definition of a top-level dual threat quarterback, okay? So that's what you already have to watch out for. Then you have Sewell, who in the last 3 weeks, it wasn't quite a month because the first 3 weeks were shaky for him, but these last 3 weeks against McNeese, 13 for 74. That's already nearly 5, or that's over 5 yards a pop. You're almost at 6. You're looking at versus Mississippi Valley State. You're looking at 12 carries for 164 yards. Now, I remember them little timetable that we used to do, 12, 12. You go and you meet them. That's 164. That's 12 squared. I may be a nerd for that, but I remember I remember them timetables, right? So against Valley, he had 12 carries for 164 yards, and that's 12 a pop. Then you had UAPB, 20 carries, 111 yards. That's over 5 a pop yet again, approaching 6 a pop yet again. This is a very dynamic running threat, both of these men. And where it comes into play is, obviously, Vaughn is your quarterback. So now you have to look at passing the ball. But that's why I look at the Grambling linebackers, because the same way that Xzaveir Vaughn is a dual threat, so is Brenden Barley. Because Barley has 3 interceptions on the year. 3 interceptions, leads Grambling, is second in the SWAC. You're looking at Andrew Jones, most tackles for a loss, most tackles, period, in the SWAC. I think that this Grambling defensive this Grambling linebacking core is equipped to deal with this on both levels. Xzaveir Vaughn is your quarterback who can run all over the field. Andrew Jones is your linebacker who can run all over the field. I remember looking at him versus Cam McCoy. I just think that the athleticism of Andrew Jones is perfect for this type of game. I would primarily put Jones in a spy type of role, or put him in a zone where he can keep eyes on Vaughn when you're passing the football. And then you're looking at Barley, who Barley's gotten a couple of picks, and he looks real smooth in coverage. He looks really smooth in coverage for your linebacking core. So you're looking at guys who can come downhill and attack Sewell. Then you're looking at guys who can chase Vaughn all over the field or intercept him in pass coverage. This matchup between Xzaveir Vaughn and Jacorian Sewell versus the Grambling linebackers of Brenden Barley and Andrew Jones is by far the most fascinating. It's by far the most interesting. It's by far the most impactful matchup that you will need and must watch if you want to see who's going to win Grambling versus Alcorn. Now, as you push forward, you have 2 more. You have Alcorn's defensive line versus Grambling's offensive line, and Grambling's only allowed 9 sacks this year. In 5 games, it's not phenomenal. That's almost about 2 a pop, but it's not bad. It's second in the SWAC. You know, it's much worse. I like my numbers to be less than 1.5, right? Like I would like to be at less than 1.5 sacks allowed. Maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh. So like I said, it's not terrible, but it's not great to me. It's not locked down. They can get got. PV doesn't rush the passer overly well. They got 3 sacks on Grambling last week. Jackson State rushes the passer really well. They got 2 sacks on Grambling the week before. So it just kind of seems like you're going to get yours. And with guys like Malachi Bailey on the inside, like these are defensive linemen who can rush the passer, but you haven't gotten too much of that from him, or from them, I should say. It's been mostly Bailey leading the charge in TFLs and sacks. But this is still something that I feel like you're going to need to watch. So give him Miles Crawley as much time as you can. Have him feeling like he's in those new Grambling slides that I just caught him modeling before I came on the show. They got some new Adidas Grambling slides and shoes. Them joints look kind of cool, I ain't going to lie. But Grambling doesn't allow the quarterback to be pressured that much as far as being brought down. If you can bring them down 2-3 times, 4 maybe even, that'll help your defense. And for the record, they've gone against everybody. D2 schools, out of conference FCS, the SWAC twice, and you going 2-2, 2-3, right? Like, outside of, funny enough, they blanked Louisiana, and that's an FBS competition. So I don't know. I don't know what the rhyme or reason. You know, ain't no rhyme or reason. But and then lastly, you want to go Bull Hargrove and Trey Bradford versus the Alcorn State run defense. I didn't feel like the Grambling running game had a great day against PV. That was a weakness, in my opinion. And that was concerning because run defense was a weakness of PV. Everybody has their games, good and bad, right? Like good units have bad days. Bad units have good days. That one there was a little bit difficult because Bradford 8 for 8. Hargrove 15 for 61. It looks good till you realize he started off the game with a 27-yard carry. And after that, he's not averaging 3 yards a pop. That's when it gets concerning, right? When you look at the big play as an outlier, and are you consistently getting yards? I understand if you take a lot of people's longest carries away, it's going to change their yards per carry dramatically. But you go from 4 a pop, which is solid, with 1 long run, to not even averaging 3, which is bad. That PV run defense was on top of their game that day. Excuse me. I called them out, and they were on top of their game that day. So this is just something that you're going to have to watch. If Grambling can't get the run game going, I do think that also changes the landscape of this game. It's like I said in the intro, running the football and forcing turnovers is something that's going to be huge in this game. I've looked at running the football for now. It'll come back later in our key to victory, and so will the turnover margin. But that's segment 3. Before we get there, we have to get into some storylines. And the one that I look at the most is Alcorn's improved offensive display. Today's episode is brought to you by ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into this toxic byproduct, right, in the gut. And that's that byproduct, not the dehydration that leads to a rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. And just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, just like you make us your first listen of the day, so that you can feel your best tomorrow. I gave pre-alcohol a try for the first time when I was at homecoming. I knew I had to ride back home in the morning, and I didn't want to be lethargic. So I went ahead and I drank myself a ZBiotics before I got on the yard. And you know what they say. ZBiotics for your first sip of Jack is going to help you shake back. So go to ZBiotics.com/locked-on to learn more and get 15% off your offer when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. And FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, with FanDuel, I'm ready to go to the Saints game. This is what I've been looking forward to for a while, and the idea of Spencer Rattler making his first start has me even more excited. But maybe you don't want to put any money on a rookie quarterback. You don't know how he's going to perform. You don't know how he's going to be stopped. I understand the volatility and the risk that comes with it. So maybe you want to go for something a little bit more solid. Maybe you want to go for a collegiate team that you've been watching all year. Maybe you want to go for your favorite NFL team. Maybe you want to go for a fun one is Jaden Daniels versus Lamar Jackson, the rushing yards between both of those guys. That's fun. All of those things are available. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com. It's simple. What is it? FanDuel.com. And if you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 bet, get $200 back in bonus bets. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com. I'll say it one more time for you. That's FanDuel.com. Make every moment more. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. And remember, for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On SEC, Locked On Big 10, Locked On Big 12, Locked On ACC. Even though we still miss Candace Cooper, we do still miss you, girl. But that's okay. Locked On ACC. Now, those are my sisters and brothers shows. Storylines. Alcorn's increased offense is the thing that I'm looking at more than anything else. If you're looking at Alcorn and this game here, I think it's a little bit of a test. Alcorn's offense is a storyline that I've been watching and monitoring all year long, right? Because I look at the first 2 weeks, they scored 3 points total. Once it got to that, I didn't care if it was FBS. That didn't matter to me. FBS competition or not, that was irrelevant to me. You scored 3 points in 2 weeks. That was concerning, and now you're under the microscope. I feel like we should do another under the microscope episode. We should. Tuesday or Wednesday, we're gonna do another under the microscope. Cause I feel like there's some teams who probably should be under the microscope. So let's do that. Anyway, sorry. That's genuine joy from on the spot programming. Where was I? Yes. I don't care if it was against FBS opponents. That doesn't matter to me. And just in general, you've seen a shift. You've seen a shift in Alcorn scoring production from out of conference to in conference. It's been drastically different. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, FBS team, 3 points. FBS team, 0 points. D2 team, 38 points. FCS team, 14 points. That, if you add it all together and you just average it, that's about a little under 14 points per game. And that's what they scored against an FBS team, FCS team, 14 points. So out of conference, Alcorn is a 14-point per game performer. But once you get into conference, it explodes. You drop 42, you drop 38. So you're averaging 40 a game. I don't think that continues, but can you give Grambling a slick 24? Like, can you give Grambling 3 touchdowns, maybe a couple of field goals? Can you do that? Can you do that? Can you give Grambling 24 points? Can you get Grambling 27 points? Can you get there? Because I don't think that you're going to drop 40 again. At some point, that has to come down. Maybe that's this week. But one thing I look at when I'm looking at who they played, right? That's the thing. Alcorn scoring production did a complete 180 when they got into the SWAC. But now I have to ask myself, who did they play? They played Mississippi Valley, and they played UAPB. Those are not exactly the strongest defenses in the SWAC. Matter of fact, they're bottom 2 in yardage and points, both 12 and 11. Okay. I see. So you've kind of feasted on bad defenses. That's okay. You play who you play, but now you have somebody new to play, and can you feast on them? That's the thing. Nobody should ever be blasted. Nobody should ever be ridiculed and critiqued for beating bad teams until they fail to beat good teams. Nobody should ever be criticized for producing against bad teams. I don't even really believe in neglecting them or downplaying them. For real, I try not to. You should not be downplayed for it until you go against somebody else and you can't do anything. So I'm looking at Sewell. Are you going to have 100 yards this game? I'm looking at Vaughn. Are you going to be a threat with your arm and your legs? Can I count on you? Can I count on you for 250 total yards? Can I count on you for 300 total yards? Right? Let's see. I want to pull up the numbers again. Over the last 3 weeks, 4 out of 3 of the last 4 weeks, he's given me 300 yards total, right? Matter of fact, he's giving me nearly 350. He's giving me nearly 350 against Valley. I think he just didn't have to do too much. He only threw 14 passes. I don't think that's really fair to go too far in on him on that. And they dropped 40-some points. So, c'est la vie. But Grambling is looking for a bounce back. With Grambling, they want to prove that they are who we thought they were after the Jackson State game. I think it's funny because you look at the rankings that we do on a weekly basis, that we review on a weekly basis. You look at that and you have them at 3 back-to-back weeks. You lost the PV and you didn't drop. You go on a bye week, obviously you didn't drop. That has more to do with Jackson State allowing Alabama A&M to come back. But I digress. I feel like you need a bounce back game because PV was emotional. That's draining. I don't think going through a 5 overtime game is easy. Luckily, you had a bye week energetically, right? Like, just if you're talking energy wise, you're able to recoup. But mentally, I thought they were supposed to have that game at 3 different points, and one was before the game started. I thought they were clearly the better team. And I would say early in the game, you start off with a big run. I'm like, there we go. You get into PV territory, the first 3 drives, you're leading at halftime. I'm thinking this is your time. We're going to go ahead and put these PV Panthers out of their misery. I was excited about it too. I told you straight flat when we came in. I was excited about PV's downfall. UAPB, do it for me. I'm waiting to read their obituary. I promise you. But they showed up that game, especially in the second half. Then you get at the end of the game, you really drive down there. Miles Cry looking as good as he's ever, or in that game, as good as he's ever looked in that game. And then you get to OT, and PV fails to score on one of the drives. The second one, I believe it was. This is you, score a touchdown. Nope, you get a field goal too. PV just kept rising to the occasion. You got to give him love, but at the end of the day, Grambling did not rise to the occasion. At the end of the day, Grambling had to go through 5 overtimes and lost. I think that can be a very emotionally draining moment, in my opinion. So I think that you really need to bounce back. I think you really need to get yourself together, and we'll see if they can. This is a critical game. Even if you take the bounce back feature out, for Grambling, you don't want to lose 2 games to 2 teams in the West. PV's done that, and now they're on their Hey, it doesn't matter what I do, but I have to be perfect. If Grambling were to lose to PV and Alcorn, they'd be in that same place. I know that PV still has 2 losses, but then you would have 2 losses. Alcorn would have none. Like that's what we're looking at now. So I think that this game is critical for Grambling. I think it's critical for Grambling. For Alcorn, it has a little less, but I mean, the idea of being on top, you wouldn't be above Southern because Southern, well, hopefully TSU beats Southern and you will be on top of them. But anyway, the point is this game is big for the top of the SWAC West. Grambling lost to PV last week. You lose to 2 teams in the top of the SWAC West, and you're in the SWAC West. That's a lot of tiebreakers working against you. You don't want that. Alcorn, you just want to be on top. You just want to win over Grambling. That's one of the big players in the SWAC West. Now, as you push forward, what about that key to victory? I told you in the beginning, it's running the football and it's the turnover battle. And that is our key to victories. And we'll break those down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold. It allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn a very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risks and rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second, or making all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Now, my key to victory for Alcorn is to protect the football. And what's fascinating about this game is that this is the 2 teams. These are the 2 teams in the SWAC that turn over the ball or that force the most turnovers. When you look at a Grambling, we've been talking about Grambling's ability to force turnovers all year, but I think Alcorn has flew under the radar just a little bit. Alcorn actually has the most turnovers in the country, forced turnovers in the country. Grambling's at number 3. So these are 2 teams that know how to turn the ball over so much. I genuinely could have just said these are our 2 keys to victory. But the reason that I highlighted Alcorn is because I told you the 2 teams that they faced in the SWAC, UAPB and then Mississippi Valley, 12 and 11. Valley 12th in yards, UAPB 11 in yards allowed, points allowed 12th, 11th. Grambling in yardage is 9th. That's the thing. You go through the 3 teams or the 2 teams that they face, and then you add Grambling. Mississippi Valley State, 12th in yards. UAPB, 11th in yards. Grambling, 9th in yards. So they all allow a lot of yardage. But why do we not speak about Grambling in the way that we speak about UAPB or Mississippi Valley State? It's because they don't allow a lot of points. They are Valley, 12th in points. UAPB, 12th in points. Grambling, 5th in points. The difference comes in the fact that you can get yards against them, but they force a lot of turnovers. So they negate that yardage by turning the ball over and giving it back to their offense. I don't care if you have a 60-yard pass to the 14-yard line. If you go in there, you throw a pick on the next play, or you fumble the next play, it's null and void, right? But here's the thing about Grambling, and this is why I say protect the football. Grambling will give up yards. Specifically, Grambling will give up explosive plays. Alcorn can get those. We've seen multiple. They have multiple explosive touchdown plays against UAPB. And you can't necessarily use defense against them on that, right? You can't be like, oh, well, they're facing them. Now they're facing another team that is prone to giving up big plays. Xzaveir Vaughn is prone to getting big plays. So I think that that's genuinely going to be the thing that gets it. And When you're looking at Grambling, you're looking at Alcorn, you're looking at two of the top three teams in the country, not just the conference, but two of the top three teams in the country when it comes to forcing turnovers. This game could get really sloppy, and the team that wins the turnover battle, the team that protects the football the most, could be the ones that walk out the victor. And while I understand I'm highlighting this specifically for Alcorn State, that's because of Grambling's penchant to allow explosive plays. But you could say the same thing for the Tigers, and protecting the football could be a key to victory for them as well. But the one I decided to rock with, I decided to go with stop the run. When I look at Xzaveir Vaughn, I look at Jacorian Sewell, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you got to stop the run before you do anything else. Because Sewell, he's been on fire lately. Vaughn, he's 320 yards plus per game over the last month, basically. And I'm not even counting that Valley game because they didn't ask him to do that much. But you know he's dynamic. You know that he can attack you from different ways. You can't say eliminate the run. With them, you can't eliminate it. There's no eliminating the run from Alcorn, because anytime that you drop back, the run is a threat, which is why I highlight Andrew Jones, which is why I highlight Jones's ability to fly sideline to sideline. Andrew Jones has the chance of being the most important player for Grambling State this week against Alcorn State, because when you look at Jacorian Sewell, he could get the handoff and come downhill. Guess who has the most tackles for a loss in the SWAC this year so far? It's Andrew Jones. Or you could look at a guy like Xzaveir Vaughn. Vaughn is a player who at quarterback is going to drop back, but you know, at any moment he could run the football. Jones is a sideline to sideline type of linebacker who can chase down quarterbacks. He's the type of guy who you want to always have eyes on Xzaveir Vaughn, which is why I say the two players that the offense runs through for Alcorn, Xzaveir Vaughn, Jacorian Sewell. Andrew Jones will be a big part of nullifying and neutralizing both of these men. He has the ability, he has the chance to be the most important player for Grambling State in order to come up with a victory. So, and I know we talked about Barley at the beginning of the show, and that's as far as passing the football. He's going to be downhill, stopping the run as well. These are the two leading tacklers on Grambling. But I think that Jones's ability to stop the quarterback run is going to be what sets him apart and makes him even more important. This right here is a matchup that I cannot wait to watch. I think that it's going to be very fun, and it's our game of the week for a reason. The SWAC West is heating up quickly. The SWAC West is the wild, wild West, and we'll see if it gets even crazier with an Alcorn victory over Grambling, because then we're going to have different conversations on where Grambling falls in the SWAC West. Whew, I can't wait. I'll be back with it on Monday to break this game down and a little bit more. We'll see if we get 3 segments or 2 segments on it. Just depends on what kind of game that they give us. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.